My grandfather died when I was 15. Heart attack, middle of the night. Completely unexpected. The entire family fell apart afterward, especially my dad. He and my grandfather had owned a small construction company together for years, and after the funeral, my dad basically became obsessed with keeping the business alive for the family. At first, everything seemed normal. Then my aunt started accusing my dad of stealing. Not directly from the company, from my grandfather. She claimed money had disappeared from his personal accounts before he died. My dad denied it immediately, and honestly everybody believed him because my aunt had always been dramatic. Family gatherings turned into screaming matches for months until eventually nobody spoke to each other anymore. My grandmother especially defended my dad. She kept saying, "Your father would never betray this family." And for years, that was the end of it. Then, when I was 24, my grandmother died too. After the funeral, we had to clean out her house. Most of it was normal, old photos, expired canned food, random junk she kept for decades. But while going through the attic, I found a locked metal box hidden behind insulation. Inside were stacks of papers, bank records, letters, and a cassette tape. I remember sitting on the attic floor, listening to that tape on an old player, thinking it would just be some sentimental family thing. Instead, it was my grandfather's voice, and he sounded terrified. The recording was dated 2 weeks before he died. On the tape, my grandfather said he believed someone in the family was stealing from him and slowly trying to take control of the business. He specifically mentioned my father by name multiple times. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "If anything happens to me, don't let Daniel touch the insurance policy." Daniel was my dad. At that point, I genuinely didn't know what to think. My dad had spent almost 10 years acting like my aunt was crazy for accusing him of anything. But the documents in the box got worse. There were copies of changed signatures on financial records, large withdrawals, even letters my grandfather wrote to lawyers saying he wanted to remove my father from parts of the company. None of it had ever been filed officially. It looked like he died before he could. I didn't tell anyone at first, but my aunt eventually found out about the box because I asked her questions about the timeline before my grandfather died. When I showed her the tape, she literally started crying. Then she told me something I never knew. The night my grandfather died, my father had been alone with him for almost 3 hours before calling an ambulance. According to my dad, Grandpa had already collapsed when he arrived, but my aunt always believed that was a lie. At that point, she wanted to go straight to the police. Then came the twist. Before we could do anything, my grandmother's lawyer contacted the family. Apparently, she'd left behind a sealed letter only to be opened after her death. The letter explained everything. My grandfather was being stolen from, but not by my dad, by my aunt. For years, she'd secretly taken money from both the company and my grandfather's personal accounts to cover gambling debts her husband didn't know about. My dad discovered it shortly before Grandpa died and confronted him privately because he didn't want the family destroyed publicly. That's why my grandfather recorded the tape, because by that point, dementia had already started affecting his memory and paranoia. He'd begun confusing timelines and believing different family members were conspiring against him. The altered signatures? My aunt forging withdrawals. The reason my grandmother defended my dad so aggressively all those years was because she knew the truth.